Hello, everybody. It's back to Succeed from the Start. And today we're back in our podcast, Heart, Not Head. And that's because that's where I truly believe that leadership is born. It's not about the head, it's not about the objective, it's about how you feel, how you think, it's about how you touch the world. And the way to bring followers behind you is always going to be when you lead from the heart, when your care for those people is bigger and more important to you than the dollar signs in your eyes. And I'm delighted that today I've got a gentleman with me, Steve Hammond. We've not known each other very long, but immediately that we met, I felt like he had a journey and a story to share with us that will highlight his journey from the head to the heart. And so I'm really delighted that you're here today, Steve.
Well, I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to be here. And Angela said, I think immediately I connected with Angela. I felt a connection there when I attended one of her open sessions to introduce the services and the community that she's running. But I just felt a need to reach out, and I did. And Angela gave me an opportunity to join you on this podcast today. And I'm really looking forward to sharing some of the things that I've experienced on that journey from head to heart. Still am, actually. I'm a bit of a nuts and bolts guy at times, and a bit sensing, but at the same time, my intuition in me and my feeling side, which I've been getting more and more in touch with, is definitely starting to shine through. My job now is all to do with development, coaching, working in the corporate world still, actually, right now. But I'll tell a little bit of a story in a minute, because originally I was planning to become a life coach, but then I had a life-changing event when I met my wife in Nepal. But we can talk about that. Why am I here talking today about from head to heart? Actually, that's probably started out in the heart, if I'm honest. If I look back as me when I was a kid, I was quite a sensitive kid and very focused on creative pursuits. I loved art and just generally just being lost in my thoughts. It was something I did quite naturally. And my auntie back then, my dad's sister, she was very much into meditation. She was one of the big gurus in the UK back in the day for meditation and Reiki therapy, and she was a medium and all sorts of stuff. I was fascinated by all this. It was something I was really interested in. And in fact, one of the first things that ever happened to me that made me talk about the heart was I was big into racing. I loved racing as a kid, road racing on a bike. And I injured myself. I had a crash, and my dad said, "Hey, you know what? I was 15. He said, you should go and see your Auntie Jo. She's learnt this new thing called Reiki. It's supposed to be pretty good for helping you." So I said, "All right, I'll go give it a go." So I went down to see my Auntie Jo. And I'm sitting having this treatment. And then all of a sudden, she just stopped. And just was quiet. It's a bit, what's wrong? She found something bad, or what's going on? What's she going to tell me? And she said, "Oh, it's going to be really strange, Steve, but I just have to tell you this. It's so strong." She said that you're a very old soul. She said, "I know you're only 15, but I've been working with this for many years now, and it's ancient. She said, and you won't know what it means until, I don't know. I don't really fully know what it would be. For a 15-year-old, you're not going to get it, and maybe you might never get it, but it's there. So don't be aware of it." And I left that session, went to my dad and said, "Aunt Jo was saying funny things." And Dad said, "Oh, well, she can do things like that. She speaks to the spirits and everything." So yeah, I know that. So I'm listening to that. And so I went away with that experience. And then there were some things years later that happened too, which I don't know how I'll get all this story in the time we have available, but it started, I got promoted. I've been struggling. I was in IT working in London, and I used to work in the City of London in a software house called Wilkins Computer Systems. And we were one of the first companies to start selling the desktop PC from Microsoft back years ago, back in the early 81, 82. And I started working in IT, writing this software. I was coding stuff, so it's not very people focused. And I went through that. I had 21 years in IT, and I became a main board director for a big company, working as a global IT director. We had businesses in New York, out in Washington, and across the US states, and we had businesses across Europe, and I had a big management team, 5 people reporting development, head of development, operations, and customer service and support. And it was a massive job. But the thing that was funny was I'd been working 38 years to get that job. And I finally got that job, and I was really chuffed. And I had someone I was talking to, some friend I had in the office, and I said, "This is ridiculous. I've been working so hard for this, but rather than being totally elated, and I am, I just feel a little exhausted. And I feel like I've been on this journey, climbing this mountain to get there. And as I got to the top, and I pulled myself up and over the top, rather than feeling the success of being there, I just saw 2,000 mountains I hadn't climbed before. I hadn't been to yet. They're just waiting for me to get to. And even in that moment, it was like, there are people, there are things I haven't used, skills I've not used, things I've not experienced that I need to experience. So in that moment, it was born, this thought to leave everything that I'd worked so hard for 21 years. Everyone thought I was mad. They said, you'll come back with your tail between your legs. You can't do this. You've been waiting your whole life to get to this level. Anyway, within 2 years, I was packed up, projects finished, £2.5–3 million project done, implemented, recruited, and I'm sitting on a plane. I'm going to Africa, and I'm going to climb Kilimanjaro and Mount Kenya.
How did you feel sitting on that plane?
I didn't feel like I'd made the wrong decision. It was so funny. I'm sitting there just feeling calm and relaxed, and wow, what's out there waiting for me now? I know when you make decisions like that, it doesn't come without cost, emotional cost, and both for you but for other people. It doesn't come free of charge. And I know that the lady I was with then, it was very difficult, and I just wanted to go traveling for, let's take 2 years out in life. 2 years is nothing, and let's just go do it and experience life and feel it. But of course, things don't work out. So it comes at a cost, and and you say, how did I feel? I felt relaxed, but if I'm totally honest, of course, there's a lot of fear there, but wasn't there. It was just like, it's done, and I've packed it all away. And all I could remember was my brother was helping me out. My brother was down there, and I just had everything ready that I needed to take in one rucksack for 2 years. I got these couple of other bags that I'd packed, which were going to take me on expeditions across the Antarctic or take me on expeditions to climb Aconcagua. And I'd packed these bags up in advance and sent them out ahead of me, and that was done by the companies that I was going with. So that was done. But I had this one rucksack, and I had this stuff all over the bed, and I'm thinking, how the hell am I going to get it in? And then I'm sitting on the plane, and it was like, I just had that picture, and I was like, oh, I finished, I can just relax. So I arrived in Nairobi. I was early, ahead of everyone else I was going to be climbing with. And then the journey just started. I just started meeting people. Everyone I met just had their minds open. It's funny, we all do it, actually. I've learned that now, is that when we disengage from, what did you call it? The nuts and bolts? No, what did you call it?
I don't think I called it that. You did.
You did. You called it the head. What you're doing is about the nuts and bolts. It's about the stuff that we connect to, that we feel so important in life. And we then go traveling. And if we're fortunate enough to go traveling for long enough, this lets go. You let that detaches from us, and then this takes over. Yes. And this is the soul, this is the spirit, this is the thing that lets us feel the environment we're in and where we are, and get to connect with all the people and the experiences, the food, the places, the smells, the environment, everything. We just open up to it. It just becomes real, so real, so vivid. It's like you've seen it for the first time.
Yes, hugely impactful, hugely different.
Totally different. It's totally different. And even now you can see it, you can feel it in me now. It was 21 years ago now that I did that, made that shift. And yet the emotions and feelings I have then are just as strong, because they're just as fresh today as they were then. But I'm meeting people. I mean, I'm in this bar, in this hotel, and there's this woman sat across me, across the bar, a local lady. She was actually working the bar. She was a prostitute, right? And she was looking at me across the bar, and she was doing all the smiles, and she was really going over the top. And I'm thinking, oh, I felt a bit awkward, but I thought, you know what? I'm going to go and talk to this lady. I want to find out who she is, where she's from. So I picked myself up, picked my drink up, and walked around. I said, look, I'm not buying anything, but I said, I'm really interested to know a bit more, because I'm just traveling, I'm setting out. Anyway, I found this lady totally opened up to me. She had 3 daughters. And their one ambition on life was to make sure that they didn't have to do what she did. Mm. She wanted to earn enough money that prevented her 3 daughters doing what she did. And I believe what she said. She wasn't wanting any money from me. And she told the story. And I would never have talked to these people in the past. In fact, people don't. They look over and you just walk past them like they don't exist.
That's so true. And it's my daughter got married a couple of years ago to another lady, and there was a really interesting conversation in the whole family. They had upset the apple cart too, and it was something that some family members didn't know how to handle. But what struck me most at their wedding was that I was meeting people who I probably wouldn't normally meet in my everyday life. And the stories that they had, that you could just see from just the conversation you had. You didn't even need to delve into anything. You just felt it. And I felt like if we don't put ourselves in these places, if we don't go and open up those conversations, if we're not willing to explore and investigate and touch in the sense of open our hearts, then how can we possibly connect with anybody? How can we understand what makes them? And the thought of this lady putting herself in that position, which must have been awful for her own self-respect and her own self-confidence, but she was doing it for her children to give them a better life. And how can anybody look down on that?
You can't. She was just a person. She was an ordinary person doing whatever we would do for our children to keep them safe and to keep them from harm and from the things that we've had to face in our lives. Thank God most of us don't have to go through that.
Yeah.
And then that was, you talk about that, so I'm on the plane, I'm flying, what am I thinking? Then I get to Nairobi and I'm then immediately, so that was like that's within 9 hours of 1 minute being an IT board director, packing in my bags and going, and I'm now having this conversation in the bar and connecting at a human, real heart level with somebody that I've never met before. And it was all about that. This whole journey was about that. I was away for 2 years. I can keep talking for 24 hours if you want. I'm not going to do that. But what I wanted to also say is that when I spent time in Africa. I traveled across Africa, went to Cape Town. And then I went to Nepal, and it's an amazing place. People are amazing. And the story there goes on, but the one thing I got out of the climbing, I did 2 big expeditions, climbing the Ampulatsula, and Mira Peak and Island Peak. I spent time with the Siddar, the main Siddar, and I got to know him really well. And I got to know him really well on one particular occasion. We're at 5,500 meters. We're stopping at this local village. And this village, all they lived off was potatoes. And they farmed the potatoes on the hillsides at 5,500 feet in the Himalaya. Everyone else is sitting in their tent, having eaten their food and getting ready for the next day. And I thought, I'm not doing this. So I stood up and went out, and I saw them all picking the potatoes. So I went over to the farmers and said, can I give a hand? So I started helping them, picking all these potatoes, putting them into the bags and all that. I tell you, it was hard work because at altitude, I was still adjusting, but it was good to do it. And we didn't speak a word of English to it. We didn't speak the same language, but we communicated. Anyway, we finished doing the work, and they said, come. I said, yeah, okay. So I came over in this little stone hut, and it was just covered by a little cloth, and you walk in, and it's pitch black, covered in smoke. And they just had these big hands of potatoes, and they were just throwing them onto the charcoals on the fire and just letting them bake on the fire. So it was burning, it was smelling. It smelled actually really good. And then you cracked up this like bit of charcoal. You cracked it open with this local homemade whatever it was, butter, and it tasted amazing. And then they said, come on, try some homemade liquor called Chang. And it was like white porridge actually, but it was alcoholic drink. And I was drinking it. It was strong as hell. Anyway, the next thing I know is the Siddar comes in, who's been the guy that's leading the expedition. Says, I wonder what you're doing. I said, great, cool, you can help me. You can translate everything for me. So we sat down, and 3 hours later, we left together out this thing. And I got out. I came to stand and get outside the thing, and couldn't stand up. This Chang was so strong. But these people were so friendly. When I got up in the morning, they came to say goodbye, and they brought their families and everything. But that was just because you took time to talk to these people. And no one else did. No one else spoke to them. They just passed through as these travelers, but didn't engage with the people they were with. So I spent the entire 2 years doing that, really. Just connecting, finding out things about people, understanding where people come from, getting myself in some pretty sticky situations at times, but always getting through them with people. You've got to open your heart to people. You've got to let them see you. And if they see you, the amazing thing is they give you so much back.
Yeah.
In India, it blew me away totally as well. It's raw in India. It's raw. If you travel with the locals, it's raw. If you don't travel with the top sort of castes, the 1 and the 2 caste, if you move down into the areas of the 3 and the 4, and you're not even allowed to be with the level 5 caste or whatever, they won't take you there. I'd flown into Calcutta, and I've come out of the airport, and I'm trying to find some local transport, and there's a cloth on the floor covering something, and it turns out to be an old man, and he's died on the street. And there's this camera crew there. So I go over to the camera crew and say, "What are you filming? What are you filming?" And they said, "It's because he's the lowest caste. No one will take him away unless his people come pick him up." This was in 2003.
Yeah.
2003, right? So India's raw. It's like all these countries are if you get to know them. And after that experience, I climbed onto a train to go to Varanasi, which that's an amazing city. That's where all of the religions come together, whether it be Hindus or Buddhism or Christianity. They're all in this one city. It's the one city that's actually got everything. But Buddha is supposed to have been there and done his noble truths. All of the great leaders in some time have gone through Varanasi according to the stories. So it's full of history. And I'm on this train going there, and it derails. But I'm actually I'm not on a passenger train. I'm on a local train, and it's got like bunk beds 6 high, and I'm traveling with Hindu priests and people and it's crazy. We have to all get off this thing and walk for hours through the fields and get to this little town, and there's no one. There's just this one white, just me, and all these locals. And this one lad comes to me and says, "You look a bit." I said, "You know what? I would like a bit of help." Yeah, they said, "We just need to catch a bus." We caught this bus. I've got a photograph. I'm surrounded by chickens and people and it's just chaos. And I'm talking to this lad, and he says, "I'm going home to my mum and my dad." I said, "Oh," he says, "yeah." So they paid for my education so I could go and become a doctor. These people had nothing. And yet they paid for his education to go and be a doctor. And then when I got there, he invited me to his house, and we had a meal together. And see, people open up their heart to you who've got nothing.
Yes.
We don't need to have money. That's the one thing I've found in my life right now, is that money, yes, I need it because I choose to live in a capitalist society, and I've got my family and my 3 kids and my wife and the dog and everything to take care of. But I can get by on very little these days. Yeah. Because I'm wealthy beyond means with everything else I have.
That's the difference. Yeah, that's the difference. It's not that we don't need money. It's not that it's wrong to earn money or to have a business and to have clients and have them paying you. I think I went through a stage of transition for me was realizing that I had this belief that if I really cared, I'd do it all for free. It was a false belief, because actually what it meant was that I couldn't pay my bills. I couldn't actually do the caring because I was struggling at the other end. So that was a kind of a false belief that I had, and that true caring meant that you did things for free. And it wasn't about that, but it was about opening up my heart to find out who I should be helping, and making sure that the people that I should be helping are people who can go and help somebody else. Bringing people together, looking out there and seeing that there are a lot of people out there who are hurting. There's a lot of people out there who are confused, who are discouraged, who don't know where to go. They don't know where to find. They're lost in different ways. And they're constantly being missold to. They're constantly being persuaded that they need something that they don't need. And that was a big transition for me. In the business world, I have a business, but it's a collaborative model where everybody rises together. It's about bringing in enough support and enough help and enough technology that we need that can be shared and can be used together and that is built together, and meeting people like you and helping you to speak about what you do. What would you say? Because obviously you've been in the business world, you've worked at the sort of the front face of all of that, where money is the biggest driver. That is what the business person who employs you wants you to help him develop. What's the difference for you in how you feel about yourself between when you were in that situation and you were driving up the mountain to get to the top of the corporate ladder, if you like, and now where you are with your family and all the different journeys that you've been on and the stories that you've told me? How does it feel? Could you compare it at all?
Yeah, you know what? When I first came to Denmark, I didn't have a job, and Regan, my wife now, I came over. She tried to live in England for a while. She got very homesick, so we came here. And while I was trying to sort myself out, I never cracked the language. I'm working hard, but I'm still not cracked it. I thought, what can I do? And I started working with a head teacher at a school in a place called Roth, and it was for refugees who were coming into the country, about giving them purpose and giving them meaning and giving them something to live for now that they were here, having gone through the horrendous situations they'd been in to get here. And that was an amazing journey for them, for me, sorry, but helping them to come to terms with where they were. And I think that's the thing that's different now to then is that I understand more about the journey. So one of the things I did with these people, I said, look, what I want you to do with the children, I want you to start to understand the philosophy of exploration. So you tell me what's the difference between now and then. What I'm actually going to tell you is it's not that different as long as we understand the philosophy of exploration. And what I said to them was, look, find something you've never seen, you've never found out before. Go talk to people you know. Find out if they were on a holiday one time and they found a stone and they put it in a drawer and it reminds them of that time. And what is it about that time? What feelings, what emotions do they have? And then I want you to come and tell those stories to us in the school when you're all back. So 20 children would come back and tell us. It blew me away. And what I did to them to show you what I said to you, I said, look, guys, I presented a journey where I'd been to the Antarctic and I'd climbed mountains in the Antarctic, mountains that had never been climbed before. And on this expedition ship with a guy, one of the first Australian to climb Everest was our guy. And this was great. I said, that's what we think of exploration, isn't it? That's where we are. We think it's something crazy like that. And I said, it's not. It's what you've just told me. It's that stone, it's that story, it's that memory that we never knew about that meant so much to the people around us, to people we've been known for years. So when you say how different it is, it's no different. I just realized that I wasn't exploring my environment the way I should be. I wasn't open to what I'd learned and where I'd been before I took the big step to do what I think was exploration. But I've been exploring my entire life until that moment. Do you understand me? I mean, when I try and answer that question, that's what it means. When I was on the truck in Africa and we'd been in Namibia, we got dropped off for 3 days in the desert. We had to live for 3 days. It wasn't hard, but it was extreme, very cool thing to do. And I would go running into the desert. And when I was running, I would find stones, these crystals, these quartz crystals. They were orange, they were blue, they were purple, there were many colors in them. But what was really weird was every time I've started collecting them, and each one of these stones I used to think, hang on, this one represents Susie, or this one represents so-and-so, or this. And there were 6 people I'd traveled with, and then I found a stone for each of them, and it meant something. For some reason, it connected with them. So at the end of the journey, when we got to Cape Town, we were all sitting down saying goodbye, and I said, this is going to be crazy, but I've got these stones for you. And each one, I went around and said, look, this stone is for you because you see the color, you see the way it radiates. That's you because it represents someone. And then I said something which is linked to what I've just told you. I said, you'll take that home and we'll hold them and we'll remember those. But the thing doesn't matter. The very nature of that stone is irrelevant. The physical nature of it. The story it represents is permanently ingrained in you. It's part of your event history and our shared event history. You never lose it. And that particular epiphany, that moment, helped me so much, particularly with my mum and dad. They both died during COVID, not with COVID, but I couldn't be at their funerals. Neither could none of it. My brother and I both live away. My brother's in Switzerland, I'm here. And we couldn't be there. And it's, you talk about that. Let's say my mum and dad are the stone, and I wanted to reach out and hold my dad's and my mum's hand and whatever. And I couldn't do that. It was all online. In fact, I had to say goodbye to my dad online. He had cancer. My mum passed away through dementia. I didn't even get to speak to her before she left. But I do know she said something that cut me and my brother hard. When she gained a moment of consciousness, she just said, "Where are the boys?" And we were not there. Mm. When you think about that, you could feel so much pain and hurt because you didn't have that moment. That you didn't get to grasp the stone and say farewell, but it didn't matter. Because everything that had any value in our life was already within me and within my brother. Everything we had shared with them over the years was still so fresh and alive in our minds. It didn't matter that I had nothing that I could represent or say that final farewell. It didn't matter because we'd been together so many times. It was so ingrained in us. And when you say to me, what's the difference? That's the difference. The difference is that I've become aware that we're continually on a journey in our life, an adventurous journey in our life, and we forget to step back, reflect and pause and understand what the hell we've done and how amazing we are in getting to where we are. Even if it's gone through so much pain, we've achieved so much. So you can look at it and think, wow, before was this and this is now. But do you understand? Just that answer the question. Do you try? It's a bit convoluted answer, but
I think so. For me, what you're sharing is it fits with the view that what we don't see in those circumstances, when we're very focused, it's the job and all of that, we forget about, or we can forget about the people. We can forget about what really matters because we're following other strategies. It's not that we're doing something wrong. It's not a terrible thing that somebody's doing, but life is passing them by. They're not actually connecting with people in the way that person is really made. They've got a work relationship with people, but they're never going to find out the history of that person because that's not part of what you do. And actually, if you went up and asked people some of the questions that you might ask somebody now, they might look at you as a bit crazy. I've done various.
Actually, Andrew, they do.
They do. I used to be a police officer, and there were times in the middle of the night sitting in a car with a policeman where you were really killing time, but they would ask me things, and invariably they were about, do you want to jump into bed with me? Basically, let's not say it like it is. And no, the answer is I do not, actually. So I thought to myself, do you know what? If you're going to be so crude or just think that you can just talk about that to me, I will just ask you things. So I just ask them things about their lives and find out more about them. But what happened then was a relationship grew. And there was a sergeant there who, and I didn't know this at the time, but he would see me very comfortably talking to some of these older guys because there had been a situation where they had been brought out of the office and put back on the streets again, much to their dismay. But I had a relationship with them. We were talking, we had a connection there. And this sergeant didn't get me anyway because I didn't swear. And in his view, if you're going to be a policewoman, you're supposed to be all tough and all this. But he would watch. And then it turned out he'd become quite jealous because I didn't have that relationship with him, but he didn't let me. He didn't let me. He didn't want to share. He didn't want to look inside of himself and find out what made him tick. That just wasn't who he was. So we were never going to get that connection going. And what you're sharing, and I love the fact that the stories that you're telling, the people that you've met from all walks of life, from those who have absolutely nothing or less than nothing, even right the way through to the people who have everything. It's at the end of the day, those people are all the same. They're all people. They've all got emotions and feelings and strengths and desires and passions and families. And there is no difference. If only we can give them the chance to understand them and to let them be who they are. And for me, to let the heart lead is to respect every single person. And even as a police officer, to respect the person who just committed the crime. Some people thought that was a crazy idea, but there was no way that you could lead them into living a different life if you didn't actually respect the fact that they had a right to life in the first place and that they had a right to have the same opportunities that everybody else has. And very often they'd been denied those opportunities and those chances, and that's what had led them into the journey that they'd taken. But at the end of the day, the people that you've met on your travels are no different from the people in the office.
This is what I say to you in the end. Although I've left that behind, I know that if I went back there now, I would see people totally differently now because I would engage with them in a different way. I would engage them in a way that would connect. I always did that anyway. Actually, I was always someone that would take my team away we'd go away for weekends and I'd force them to do crazy stuff. But we might climb mountains together or whatever. I remember I had this lady, a very, very big power dressing lady, a big consultant. I hired her to help with a project we needed to go in. Anyway, I dragged her along with 20 other people to go climb the 3 peaks in England, Ben Nevis and the Scafell Pike and the Snowdon. And it was chucking it down with rain, and I was giving her a hard time. She said, "Oh, fuck you, go for it, fuck you, I'm going to kill you." I said, come on, get yourself up there, get up and get down. We can sit and we can tell the stories in the bar after. You'll be able to talk to everybody. Anyway, she hated me. But she got to the bar after and she got it. The camaraderie, the talking. I got to understand who she was. She got to understand who people were. Okay, all right. I had my comeuppance because she said to me when I got back in the office, she said, you know what, you're not getting away with that. I work in opera and I do all the costumes and dressing of the people. You are going to come and help me do that. Okay, fair enough. So I mean, you've got to give and take in these things, right? You've got to be able to connect and do different at different levels. So it's so important to be able to connect like that.
Yes.
I love the work you do, and I think it's a phenomenal community you've created. And I look at it from the outside. I think it's amazing what you've done. What am I wanting to do? I did start out when I first came back to be a life coach. That was my dream. And then it woke up one thing and another. My Rega, she came to England for 8 months, got very homesick. I opened my company, Vital Steps, there. And then we had to move back to Denmark. When I moved to Denmark, I had no language, no company, I had nothing. And I had to find a way. So I even designed websites. I started doing that work with the school I mentioned. I went cutting Christmas trees for 3 months in the forest around here at Christmas, just doing things to get by and find. And then Rega and I found a house here, a little house, and what they call it Binningsvex, but the old oak beam house. It was in the middle of town. It was falling apart. And Rega's dad had just become a pensionist, and he was an old bricklayer. He was a builder, and he said, "Steve, if you be my labourer, we can build it together." So we built this house totally, just me, him, Rega's mum, and her, basically. And we got one professional builder to come and do the roof for us, but everything else we built from scratch. I'd never done anything like that in my life before, ever. I even built a little 10 square metre wooden house in the garden where Rega and I lived for 8 months. And 4 months into that, she sat me down. She said, "Close your eyes." And I'm sitting on this bed. We had a bed, a TV, internet, all in this little 10 square metre wooden house. And I built it, by the way. It was my house I built. And she said, "Look, close your eyes. Just put your hand on." Boom. I opened it, and there was a dummy in my hand. I went, "What?" And she was pregnant. We were 4 months into this, 4 months in this wooden house. The house the only room that worked was the bathroom, and it was like a builder's yard anyway. We'd taken the roof off the house, and she spent the first 4 months in this house, little wooden house. So that was what we did. We built this goddamn house in 18 months, and then I'm trying to get my company going, and then I bumped into this local guy, and we'd been working now. Him and his wife have been run a company called Training Gallery, and I bumped into them, and I started doing a bit of work with them. And I've been working with this guy now for 16 years, doing different things, doing international. It meant that I went from being the dream of a life coach to going back into the corporate world, because it was the way I could do it. I could speak English there. I could talk English and train in English and do all the work I could do in English. And then what was funny was, while I was running these courses, and I got to help one company here to do their academy programs every spring and every autumn. And I would run 3 programs, one on project management, it's pretty nuts and bolts, one on the people factor, which was pretty cool, because that was all about human behavior, which I love, and how to profile and who we are and how we work. And another one on influencing skills. So how do you get what
Somebody. Sorry, say that last little bit again.
And then we had the other one, which is influencing skills when you don't have any authority. So I was running these programs. So I went from wanting to be a life coach to running these corporate programs. And I was also doing a lot of team development work with businesses where I'd work with a leader and 12 or so team members. And some of these programs with these teams were lasting 3 years. I'd go in 3 times a year and then do follow-up sessions and things. So it was really good work. But the one thing that stood out for most for me was all in the evaluations, people would say, "I came on a course of project management, and I walked away on a course about self-development. How did you do that?" I said, "I don't really know, actually. What did you take away from it?" Because I'm not setting out to do it, but it's the way I work. It's the way I approach things. It's the way I deliver things now. I look at the people. I feel the room. And the thing that amazed me was they would come and say, "Steve, when you said that, I said that, where did that come from?" I said, "Well, I don't really know. I don't know. What did I say? What did I say? Well, you said this and that." And then I started to coach. When I was coaching these executives and people, that was saying, "Can we record when you summarize at the end of a session and you put your thoughts and can we record that?" I said, "Yeah, fine." And because I said, obviously your decision is to take note of it, whatever you want. I'm not telling you, this is just, but you can record it. I said, would you mind sharing it with me? And they shared it with me. And I used to listen to this stuff that I'd said, and I'm thinking, that's actually pretty good. Where did that come from? And then I just realized that some of the stuff I was saying actually was good, and I needed to capture it. So I've started capturing it more and more on walk and talks. When I take little Ellie, our little dog, little Ken, we go out, I record my walk and talks about the heart, things that I'm thinking, about emotional intelligence, about psychological safety, what it takes to get that as a person, as a leader. And I've started getting these models in my head that go, look, if we start off at the very top of the pyramid, we go, okay, we've got revenue, we've got profit, and we've got reinvestment. So you need revenue to generate your profit, and your profit lets you reinvest. Okay, that's fair enough. But what are those three things dependent on? People are an asset in a company, but they're a dual asset because they protect every other asset within it, whether it be sales, purchasing, whatever, production. They are everything. And what's the one thing that enables people to deliver is connection. So if you take the profit line, the revenue, you take the profit and the reinvestment, underneath that you've got the functions, distribution, sales, marketing, product production, R&D. All of those things have people in it, and everyone in those functions need to connect. And what does connection, if you can only connect if you have one thing, and what's that? Trust. If you don't have trust, you have no connection, and therefore you have nothing. And where does trust come from? Emotional intelligence, creating psychological safety. So fundamentally, if you don't have psychological safety, if you don't understand the heart and how to connect with your fellow human, if you go all the way up to the pyramid, the connections don't work in the functions, so sales don't work as well as they should, production's not working as well as it should. You're not generating the revenue you should, the profits no, they don't reinvest. So if people want hard-nosed, if people want to bloody get hard-nosed about this, we talked about the head and then this heart, that model that I'm just working my way through right now, and I'm trying to figure out how to deliver, shows you that actually it always starts at the heart, because psychological safety is the one thing that builds trust. And without trust, we have no connection. And if we don't have connection, businesses can't succeed. Okay, you know what? Someone will say to me, yes, they can. I say, how? I said, okay, the story is like this. They'd say to me, well, the story is like this. So these people, these companies bring graduates in, high flyers, they burn them until they're worth nothing, and then dump them and then bring in some more. They make a shed load of money, right? But they create so much collateral damage, and ultimately that company becomes toxic. And the one thing that's going to start biting these businesses is the new generational norm that's out there now, which is that people demand psychological and emotional safety. They want people to see them and take care of them. That's my personal mission now. That's what I want to try and bring to corporate world. But at the same time, I also want to help with I want to help individuals the same way as you do to find their own inner self and to really develop themselves as an individual and find their path. That's something I want to do for people. Where am I with that journey? I'm at the beginning, I think. I feel I'm right at the beginning.
You might be at the, I was going to say, you might be at the beginning, but you're a lot further into your journey. Your beginning is a lot further on than some other people's beginning. Everything that you've shared, you've literally shared the structure of your program, and it touches me because I've been part of those companies. I've been part of those places where people are not at the heart of the business, or the heart is not at the heart of the business, and it makes me so sad. And I watch it and I see it across the country. I see the way the country's run. I see the things that people are complaining about, the things that people are struggling with. And it all boils down to the fact that the heart isn't there, that connection. When you talked about people recording what you said and you listened back to it and you heard the value in what you said, that only becomes when you start listening to your heart, when you start taking the instinctive part of you, the part of you that makes you who you really are, and you will allow it to flow out, which is exactly what you were doing. And for me, the children used to laugh at me, particularly my daughter, and she'd say, Mum, where did that come from? She'd hear me talking to some person I've never met before, and she'd say, how did you know what that to say? And it would just, because I listened to my heart. My heart will tell me what to say. It will lead me as long as I allow it to. But I have to that can cause knocks. It can cause, you have to take those knocks and you have to learn from them. And there's been things, when you talked about your parents, you know, I've lost two siblings. And when my brother died, it felt like the floor had fallen out of the bottom of my life. It felt like this was the guy who'd been my hero, who'd cared for me, looked after me, was a lot older than me. And I wasn't sure if I could come back from it because it shocked me so much and I felt bereft. But it was as I began to understand that he hadn't left me, that everything about him was still there. I just had to find a new way to negotiate it and to move around it. And all the love that he'd given me had made me stronger. And it was actually my mum who said to me, would you rather have had that 47 years without your brother, just so you didn't go through the pain of losing him? And he was her firstborn son. And for her to say that to me moved me so much. But it was one of those journeys that has increased my heart, because I don't believe your heart stays the physical size of that it is. It grows and grows if you let it, but you have to let it. You have to open it. You have to allow things to change you and to mold you. And it's been really fascinating. We'll have to draw to a close. We could talk all night, but fascinating just listening to your journey and the processes that you've gone through and that you've allowed yourself to go through, because you do have to give yourself permission. It doesn't just happen unless you embrace it and unless you're willing to listen to it. So I value that. I think there's a lot more that we're going to hear from you, and I'd love to come back and continue the conversation on another time. And if you're watching us, if you're listening to this podcast, then do get in touch. Maybe you've got a story to share. Maybe you have seen a change in your life where your heart has begun to take over your head and deliver to the world what you were made to deliver, to touch the world in the way that you were meant to touch the world. Because I would love to help you get that story out there. I would love to put you in front of people who need you, and they do need you. There's a lot of pain in this world, and they need people to walk alongside and to support and help and to allow them to grow. So it's been lovely talking to you again, Steve. And I would love, as I say, to bring you back at some point and continue this journey.
I would love to come back, but I must say thank you for just giving me this initial opportunity. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.